Welcome back to another episode of your Joyful Order podcast. On today's episode, we are diving into our boundary series. Now, I want you to ever think of you have ever found yourself just feeling drained, resentful, or struggling to maintain healthy connection in your relationships. If so, this episode is for you. We are diving into a crucial topic, which is creating healthy boundaries in relationships. Boundaries aren't just about building walls, they are about creating a framework that fosters respect, trust, and emotional well being. To help us navigate this conversation, I have an amazing guest. So stay tuned for this episode. Hey everyone, I'm Leslie Martinez, and you're listening to your Joyful Order podcast. Each week, I will bring you joyful stories that will motivate and inspire you, and at the same time, bring order to your everyday life. Let's just say the show will be a mixture of preaching and teaching with a kick of motivation from your girl here. Welcome to your Joyful Order podcast. I am so excited for my guest today. Stacey Echeverria is a experienced counselor who has dedicated over 15 years to helping individuals and couples find hope, healing, and freedom. She is a licensed pastoral counselor with a master's in clinical Christian counseling, and she is passionate about helping people take the first steps towards meaningful change in their relationships. So, Stacey, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Leslie. I'm happy to be here.
Honestly, I am so excited to have you. I have been waiting for someone just with your knowledge, your wisdom, your education to have on the podcast to talk about a really kind of challenging topic here. And we're talking about healthy boundaries. And one of the most common struggles that people face in relationships, whether it be romantic, family, friendships, or even work relationships, is setting and maintaining healthy boundaries. And we know that boundaries are essential for your emotional and just relational well being and health, right? But so many people struggle with it and they just don't know how to establish because, like, they may feel guilty out of creating boundaries. So, as someone who has helped individuals navigate through, through all of this, like couples and individuals, I just want to dive into this topic with you. So, Stacey, let's just start with the basics. What exactly are healthy boundaries and why are they so important to relationships?
Right, that's a great question. So boundaries are essential to provide safety in a relationship. Whether it's a romantic relationship, a friendship, a work relationship, professional one, even in school if you're a student, uh, it is really about safety. It tells the other person, this is where I end and you begin. And I look at boundaries, and this is an example that I always give, my clients, and I'll tell them, look, you have a fence around your yard, right? It goes all the way around your yard. It tells people whether or not they can cross over that boundary or not, right? If there aren't any boundaries, what's missing in the relationship is respect. And respect is acknowledging that someone has worth and value. If you are an individual that crosses boundaries all the time, essentially what you're saying to that person is that they don't have any worth or value and you really don't care about them. And it really comes down to that. And why are boundaries so hard to establish is because we've not been taught the value of boundaries. There's fear around establishing. I liked what you said, where people feel guilty, right? The other thing is that people are afraid to set boundaries because they're afraid that they're going to be rejected when they do so.
Hmm. Ugh, that's so good, Stacey. That's like a stab to the heart right now. Yes. That is so good. And rejection is really hard to accept, right? You think, "Okay, I need this boundary with this person." You establish it, and then that person rejects you. And, like, I say it's kind of like a stab to the heart because that's something that, like, I've experienced. I set a really hard boundary with the relationship with my father, and it's been like 18 years of rejection, basically, you know? So I I have lived through that most definitely, and it a lot of it came out of, like, a lack of respect and just kind of trying to accept something that is was never gonna be, you know? So I love how you said, though, that it provides boundaries provide safety. And can you just kind of go into that a little bit? Like, I know that many people struggle with boundaries because of that fear of conflict, uh, or rejection, like you said. How can someone kinda overcome that fear to realize that you have to get past that in order to provide safety for yourself?
Right. So, well, look, Proverbs 4:23, it says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." And so this verse particularly highlights the importance of protecting your heart and emotional well-being, serving as a foundation for setting boundaries. And so here's the thing, it really comes back to, how does the individual view themselves? Do they think they're not worth having boundaries? Do they think they're not worth having safety in their lives? So it comes down to that. I do a lot of work with my clients around their false beliefs. So there's a false belief that says, if I set a boundary, I will be rejected. If I set a boundary, I won't be accepted. If I set a boundary, I won't have relationship in my life. Well, that's a lie from the pit of hell. It's very clear that in order for us to have healthy boundaries and healthy relationships, excuse me, is to know what our value is in Christ. First and foremost. So there's an identity issue here. And if we don't know who we are in him, well, there's issues around that. So how do we get past, right, the fear of setting boundaries? I want to take it to this example here with regard to those listeners and people that are watching. If you are a parent and you remember when you had young kids, right? And you set boundaries for them, it's because you love them and you wanted them to be safe. You didn't want them getting hurt, right? You
Yes.
didn't want them running out into the street, God forbid, getting hit by a car. You have to get past the fear of what you think might happen and really get to reality and what is going to happen if you don't. You will be abused, you will be taken advantage of, you will not be cared for, you will not be loved, right? Are those the things you want in your life? So you have to get past that and go, if I want to be in healthy relationships, people need to know what I am okay with and what I am not okay with. And then you have to figure out, well, what are those things, right? So you identify your limits, right? And I think about people that have been physically abused, whether it's, a domestic violence situation or even sexual abuse. For them, a healthy boundary maybe as they are going through their own healing process is they don't want anyone touching them. They don't want anyone hugging them, and that is okay. So I want to speak to that really quick. In the church environment, we have a tendency to be huggy, right? With people we don't know.
Hey,
But we
I think
don't
just Latino families in general too, like certain cultures, right? You can't leave your family event without hugging and kissing like every tío and tía, right?
Right, right, exactly. But there are people in church that you don't know, that you're meeting for the first time, and you immediately want to give them a hug. And the thing of it is, I would caution you in that. I think it's a beautiful thing that you have that warmth and you want to love on people, but we don't know their story. And their personal boundary may be a handshake is as far as they can go because a touch in their experience was harmful, was hurtful, was painful. Right? So there's those physical boundaries that we have to be aware of other people. Also, too, if you're not comfortable with certain things, uh, I also think about how your people are spoken to. If
Mhm.
you're in a relationship where you're being belittled, you're being degraded, you're being criticized, you're being made fun of, there's emotional boundaries that need to happen as well. And you get to say no to those things. And a lot of the time with women, and I work a lot with betrayed spouses when the husbands are the ones that are struggling with sex addiction, and I would talk with them about a safety plan, and it's all about the boundaries. And they have a hard time with that. But here's the thing. I say to them, "Does Jesus treat you that way? The way your husband's treating you? Why would you allow that behavior to continue?"
Mm. Ugh, that's so good, Stacy. Yeah.
You know, why would you allow anyone to treat you that way? It's not okay. No, we cannot control what someone else is doing,
Mhm.
but we can certainly be empowered to stand up for ourselves and say, this really isn't okay for me.
Mhm. Yeah. One of the things, just as you're saying right now, it just made me think, like, kinda going back to the whole hug things, right? Like I said, there's certain cultures that we're just huggers. Myself, like, I typically am a big hugger, I love to hug people, and I'm just a very, like, warm, welcoming person, and we don't know the stories and backgrounds of what people have experienced, right? And as I am trying to learn more about human interaction, human relationships, human emotions, one of the things that I have become a little bit more sensitive to is this concept of of more of leaning towards wonder rather than being judgmental, right?
Yes, yes,
So, how people respond to certain things, like, if I were to go and give someone a hug and they're just like, "No," like, rather than me taking offense and be like, "Oh, what's up with her? Like, why is
yeah,
she"
right.
that to lean more on the side of wonder of, "Wow, I wonder what she has gone through that she doesn't hug." Like, I wonder what she is going through right now. I wonder what challenges she has experienced. I wonder if maybe I did do something or say something that she didn't feel comfortable with me. And that is something that I learned through a book, the Emotionally Healthy and Spirituality book. Uh in lean more towards wonder rather than judgmental about it or feeling a sense of rejection, and I think that's important for people to know, like, we don't know the backgrounds of everyone, and just because I'm a hugger and I'm, like, a warm, welcoming person, there's other people that aren't necessarily like that because there is so much trauma that has gone through, you know? Yeah, especially in church communities too, right? Like, one of my old pastors, she used to say, that churches are basically hospitals for sick people.
Yes,
They are places where people come because they are hurting. They have
right.
experienced trauma, they've experienced hurt, they've experienced loss, they've experienced grief. So
Mhm.
it is a, like, emotional, spiritual hospital where people come. So we have to know that there are people in churches. I mean, there's people everywhere, but particularly, like, we're talking about in the church, there are broken people there. We don't know, and having led, like, community groups and stuff for so many years, like, o over 20 years, I've led community groups in all of my churches, and that is something that I've had to learn, like, once you gain that trust with someone, then they begin to kinda open up, and then you learn their story and you hear their background. Sometimes I was, like, floored to hear what some of these people have gone through. It's allowed me to just have a little bit more compassion towards people. Now, kinda going back to the whole, like, boundaries and stuff, I want us to kinda touch a little bit about kind of some red flags that we might see. Like, how do you recognize when specific relationships lack healthy boundaries? What are those warning signs that you might be in relationship that is lacking boundaries?
Right. All right. So there's several different areas that I'd like to just touch on really quick. Just talk about the physical boundaries, right? So I love that you said, to approach with wonder. What I tell my clients is to move toward curiosity,
Mhm.
right? Be
Mhm. Yeah.
curious, ask those
Yeah.
questions, right? Because it isn't about you, it's about them. There's something going on over there. So a red flag around the physical is, are is someone invading my personal space or are they disregarding my preferences? And it might be the one time. So if it's one time, it may be that, they don't know. But if you've told them and they continue to do that over and over and over again, that's a red flag, right? They're dismissive of it, they don't take it seriously. That is a problem. So that's in the physical. In the emotional arena, do you feel emotionally supported or dismissed? Again, that dismissiveness. Are you comfortable sharing your thoughts and feelings? If you don't feel comfortable, right, that is an issue. Again, it's once you've communicated, hey, I really don't like it when you insult me or belittle me. And I know you say you're joking around, but it's really hurtful to me. And they continue to do so. A red flag in the mental boundaries, right? Is there a person that's trying to influence your thoughts or decisions in a way that feels manipulative? That could be a red flag. Again, uh, if it's a one-off and you have, shared with them, "Hey, I really don't like it when this happens." And they continue to do it, or you're not allowed to express your opinions, right? And or you do express your opinions, but you feel judged by doing so. So that's a red flag. In the arena of time, right? So we don't think about time as a boundary, but time, we have to put boundaries around time. Do you have enough time for yourself and your priorities, right? Are you being pressured to give more time or energy than you're comfortable with? I'll tell you where this happens the most. It's in the church arena, right? Where the same people get asked over and over and over again, "Hey, someone, didn't show up to usher, or someone didn't show up to greet, or they didn't show up for hospitality. Oh, would you mind stepping in?" Well, that's a lack of consideration of someone's boundaries, of their time, right? If you are always serving, when are you just allowed to be and receive? Right? Ministry in and of itself is a good thing. But if it's not the right thing at that time, it ends up creating a lot of resentment in an individual. And then they never want to serve ever again.
I am so glad that you brought this up because this is this is like a very kind of touchy subject.
It
Uh,
is.
and it's one that I don't like. I've been in ministry for 24 years, right? And I have been full on. I mean, I've worked full time in ministry. I've been active in my churches and like in and out, community groups, leading, all of this. And for probably the first, like, 17 years of me being in ministry, I just gave and gave and gave so much that I felt that I was being taken advantage of. That I got overwhelmed, I got burnt out, so much that I quit my job full time in ministry because of it. And like, I really don't wanna blame anyone other than myself because I was naive and not creating healthy boundaries, uh, and I kinda felt that the more I gave to the church it wasn't so much giving to church, it's like I'm giving to God, uh, and I don't wanna say that, like, you have to create boundaries around God, like, that's not it, but you have to create boundaries around your relationship with the church. And
Right.
it took a long time for me to get there, but it took to where I got burnt out. And all it took was for me to say no. That that's all it took. It is no blame on any of those people. But I just was like, "Yes, yes, okay, sure. What do you need?" Like, and I see that so many times in the church, having been so involved in the church, and one of the things that many pastors preach is, like, for new believers that when you're coming in, just give us 1 year. Give God 1 year, right? And that 1 year, you see those people going all in. They are at church 24/7.
Yeah.
Every community group, every place
Mhm.
that they can volunteer, they're out, they're doing outreach, they're doing greeter. doing prayer, they're doing children's, they're leading, 3 or 4 groups, and it's like, I'm here, and then by the end of the year, they're completely wiped out, and we don't see them ever again.
Right, and that's a problem. Yeah,
Yes.
that is a major, major problem.
Can
Ma
you just touch about, like, how to
yeah.
create those boundaries within the church?
Yeah, let me talk about that a little
Okay.
bit. I'm going to just share a little bit of my own story in that when I first came to know the Lord, and then I started serving in the church, and I was that person that people would come out to. Oh, Stacy, so and so didn't show up, and I'm
Mm,
thinking, and is that my problem? It's not my problem, but can you just help out? So it was like 12 Sundays running where someone's not showing up. And
mhm.
now why am I responsible for that?
Yeah.
It's unfair. So there was that. I started to feel a little upset by it, but my question to you, Leslie, even to myself and even to others who keep saying yes, why are you saying yes? What is driving that? So, there's a lot of things that could be going on there. Some people may have a belief system that says, my worth and value is in my performance. So it's a performance oriented issue here. So you've got to go to the word and see what the word says about all of that, right? Well, you like the attention of it. That could be another reason, right? And you yourself don't have healthy boundaries either when you keep saying yes, right? So when we keep saying yes, it's, oh, is it because, I want to be acknowledged or I want the attention, or there could be a number of different things going on. Um, I think it is a disservice to individuals that are new to the church, who are new to the faith, to say, give me 1 year. What I say to those new believers is you need to be discerning as to where God is leading you. It is perfectly okay to come to church every Sunday or Wednesday or both and sit and receive. Soak it up like a sponge. Hey, it's okay to do that. And let the Lord show you where it is that He wants you to serve. It's not going to be in everything, it's where you're called, and that's where you go. No one else can speak into that, right? They might acknowledge certain talents that you have or giftings and stuff like that. But it really is about, are you listening to the Lord? Are you hearing from Him? And then are you doing what He's telling you to do? Okay. So for me, being in the ministry that I am in my own business, in counseling, the clients that I have zero desire to then be in the church and serve in some sort of ministry at church. Why? Because I'm already in ministry. I'm already doing it. And the church isn't a building, it's the people,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Yes.
So
So
I
good.
serve I serve in my community as well with my neighbors. I have friendships. There are people in my community that don't know him. Well, I strike up friendships with people. I know people's names and I talk with them, and I try to be encouraging. To me, when we think about ministry, ministry is wherever you happen to be going. You're at the bank, you're at the school, you're at the market, you're at the gas station. There's opportunities to be encouraging to someone and show the light to them, the light of the world to them. So with that, I just, for anyone that may be, watching or listening, if you're feeling guilty about not serving, I really want you to not be under that. Don't be under that anymore. The Lord does not put that over you. That's Satan that's doing that. You just really need to be very close to the Lord and asking him prayerfully every day, right? Lord, where do you want me to serve?
Mhm.
He'll let you know, and he'll let you know the timing of it. So I
Yeah.
hope that answered that question.
Yes, no, that's so good. Now, one of the things that you were kind of touching upon with that, and I just want to add to that, and this going back because when you said like, what is the underlining reason for that? As like, is it because you are you find your worth in performance, your in value and stuff. And I know going back for me, like, it was all of that. Yes, I
Okay.
wanted to please people. It was
Yeah.
found my worth in performance, right? Because I
Mhm.
was just a goal-getter and just constantly
Sure.
doing, doing, doing. And then I started, I've learned beyond that. Like, I've gotten past and know that, like, my value is not in my performance. My value is in Christ.
Right.
But I think one thing also, and this is just having been in the church for so long, is that it's not only that people like find, hey, I'm valued here. I have a worth here and they want to be here like all the time, right? But in a sense, also, they are avoiding their reality. They are avoiding what is at home. There is chaos, there is a mess at home. And being at church is their safe place, which
Mhm.
as it should be, right?
Yeah.
As it should be, and they wanna be there 24/7 because they wanna avoid the reality of facing what is being, experienced at home. So it's like, "Oh, let me just be here," which, I kind of always teeter back and forth with that. It's like, yes,
Mhm.
be your safe place, and I get while you are here. However, you still have to face your reality and fix that, whatever that is. If you're in a bad marriage or something, and you are just
Yeah.
flawless here being at church and you're avoiding that situation. Yeah,
Right,
I
right.
saw that a lot.
I was gonna tag on to that, and that is, yes, there may be something going on at home that they're wanting to avoid. The other side of that is they're running away from going towards something, right? They're avoiding, and the thing is, the thing that they might be avoiding is themselves because they're avoiding, there's all this, maybe they're not even aware of it, they might be sensing it or feeling it. There's all this yuck inside of me that needs healing, but they don't know how to take that step in getting that healing, or maybe they're not ready for it yet. So instead of feeling badly about that, well, this is what makes me feel good here about myself. Eventually, all that's going to catch up. And you're going to have to deal with it one way or another. So you better do it sooner rather than later.
Yes. No, that's so good, Stacy. Okay, now going back a little bit to boundaries, because I want to ask this question because I think this is a very valuable one. Some people really think that boundaries are just a way of being harsh or selfish. They look at boundaries like, no, that's just being selfish. Like, God called us to be out and serve others and be loving and graceful and forgiving to people. So they look at boundaries as just, that doesn't seem godly, right?
Right. Right.
So, how can we reframe our thinking on boundaries and look at it as more of an act of love and respect?
Right. I like that. Looking at it as an act of love and respect for self, for self.
Mhm.
Right. Isn't it about the others at this point? It's about self. The boundary is for you. Um, so I'm going to put it in this way. When you say yes to everything and you eventually get to a point where you're experiencing burnout, you're no good to anyone at that point, and you can't do anything. And so saying no, so there's a couple of things going on with that. So I got very comfortable with that word, no. I really did. It's a very powerful word. That word allows you to do what the Lord has called you to do. Nothing more, nothing less, right? We have to keep in mind that who we are is not what we do. Who we are is what the Lord says. That's who we are. That never changes. Who he says we are is who he says we are. That never changes. There's nothing we can do in our doing that will ever change that, right? But when we say yes, 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 what we're also doing is we're taking away opportunities from other people in the church that are called to everything you're saying yes to, and you're taking that away from them to serve in the church because all the positions are filled. That would be selfish, I would say.
Yeah,
The
that's
selflessness is knowing what your limits are, what you are called to, and doing that.
so good. I am writing down, like, so much, Stacy. Hold on. I gotta catch up here. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is so good." I mean, I know I can come back and rewatch this, but my goodness, you are hitting so many good things right now. And knowing your limits, I think that is just a huge challenge that people have, is that they truly do not understand what their capacity is,
Right.
and they overextend themselves.
Yeah.
They, overbook, overdo,
Right.
overwhelm, and they don't realize we all have a certain capacity.
Correct.
And I think even, like, going back and looking at Jesus and his ministry, he
Yes.
capacity. He That's when he would retreat, when he would go
Yes.
off and, "I need
Right.
to just be with God, I need to pray, I'm at capacity
Right.
now, I need to
Right.
spend time alone." He
Yep.
went in the garden, he went in the desert, he went and he retreated, right? Because he knew his capacity, and he had to go back and refuel.
Yeah.
People don't do that now,
No.
and they
No.
reach their capacity, beyond their capacity. They don't go and refill with God. They don't rest. They don't honor the Sabbath as they should.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
It just turns into, like, an explosion because they're not creating those boundaries. So, when we look at the boundary, like, Jesus had boundaries in his
Absolutely
ministry,
did.
right?
He
Like,
sure did.
yeah. So, we just have to connect knowing the boundaries that Jesus had when he did his ministry, and knowing I am only one person and there is so much in my capacity that I am able to do. And not look at it as being selfish, but look at it as actually being selfless, because
Yeah.
you're not overextending yourself to people
Correct.
you can't give your all to, or do what God actually ordained you to do, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Now I think of the scripture where Paul is describing the different parts of the body.
Mhm,
The
mhm.
hands, the feet, the head, all of that. And well, the hand doesn't do what the foot does. The head doesn't do, what the arm does. And so allowing for others to come in, bringing in maybe a different perspective, a different way of looking at things, a different skill set, right? I mean, I think that's just so beautiful because it's when we're serving, it's collaborative.
Mhm.
It's collaborative, right? We're not supposed to do it all. I think about the pastors where they wear so many different hats, and I'm going, they're going to burn out in about 3 years, and that's the average lifespan of a pastor in a church. 3 years and then they're out. They're not supposed to do everything. So this is what I tell my clients: stay in your lane. Stay in the lane the Lord has for you. Don't try to make a right turn or a left turn or a U turn or look at what someone else is doing. Just stay focused on where the Lord has you.
Yes.
And everything's going to be just fine, right? It's when we start, questioning, well, is the Lord, is he like, is he doing this right? Seriously, is he doing this right? Is this good? Is it stop questioning the Lord, right? As long as you are with the Lord, he's never going to lead you to anything that's going to be harmful to you, right? So just stay in your lane, know what your gifts are, know here's the thing. This is what I know about the Lord in my own life. Whatever it is that I have passion for, he gives me the grace to do it. Now, I'm one of those people where unlike my husband, I recharge by spending time alone. I spend time with the Lord. I spend time alone. Sometimes I'll look at my calendar and I'll say, Lord, I don't know that I have capacity for all this stuff that's on here. Not that I overbook or anything, but I'm just going, I don't know. And he's like, well, I do. And he starts moving things off my calendar.
Yeah.
And I'm just so grateful when he does that because he knows I'm needing the rest, not the physical rest, because the work that I do is emotionally and spiritually draining. And he knows that I need that downtime to then come back for the next day and be with my client and be with them fully. Right. And that's the same thing as you're serving and even with your boundaries and stuff like that. I love that you mentioned Sabbath. We are not really good at doing that.
Oh, yeah. We're horrible.
Yeah.
We are absolutely our culture, and just, like, Americans in general,
Oh, yeah.
It's like Sabbath. What is that? What?
That's why I love hearing about other countries that have a siesta,
Yes.
where they're
Yes.
taking naps in the middle of the day. I'm like, I
Yes.
wish I could do that, you know, but again, I love that the Lord's grace also empowers us to do what we're called to do. No more, no less. And so we need to be content in that. Again, it's staying in your lane. It doesn't matter what everyone else is doing. And, people will say, well, I want to do what they're doing. No, the Lord's got you here doing what you're doing for a very specific reason.
Yes. Yes.
And isn't that the boundary?
Oh, for
That's the
sure.
boundary.
Yeah, for sure. I think a bigger issue is that there is a lack of self-awareness with people.
Yeah.
And can you just kind of touch upon that a little bit of like what role does self-awareness play in setting the boundaries and how can we start to develop more self-awareness and understanding what our capacity is to create those boundaries?
Yeah, the lack of self-awareness says to me that that person does not know that they need boundaries. And then really examining with a lot of the work that I do with my clients is identifying the root issues. So, in order to have awareness as to why you're doing whatever it is that you're doing that continues to be unhealthy, we need to get to those root issues, bring it to the awareness, because then you can start doing something about it. So there may need to be some healing around trauma with that. So it all depends on family of origin and what was experienced and what the dynamic was in family of origin as well. There are families that, there's no boundaries. You're in each other's business and this and that and the other. And then enmeshment is a different thing, but that tends to happen as well. Well, you have no idea where the person ends and the other person begins. It's just very enmeshed. So the self-awareness has to come from getting to the root issue as to why you don't have that awareness. There's trauma there. And so that needs to be healed. And then empowering them by the word of God, with the word of God, to take these steps. Baby steps. It takes time, to change the way things are and the way that they have been for decades, maybe. So it is a slower process, but it really is about consistency. So first thing I would say to people is if you don't have an awareness that you need to have boundaries, then really look at doing some deep healing work. You really need to do that. Otherwise, if you don't get to those root issues, you'll continue perpetuating the same cycle that you're in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. And,
Yeah.
one thing I think, like, going back to how you were talking about, like, your family of origin and you don't know, like, you're constantly involved in your family drama and stuff. So, one of the things I was telling you kind of before we had hit record is that one of the challenges I think I have is that I I know that I need to create healthier boundaries around, like, my inner circle, and even my immediate family, with my husband, with my children, with my sister, because you typically think that they're they're your immediate family, like, "This is my spouse, this is my children." We don't have boundaries. Like, like, honestly, right? Honestly. And I think in certain cultures also, certain family dynamics, you're Latinos, Latinos are in everybody's business, right? Not like Indian. I know, like, my aunts, they say that, "Oh, did you know we gotta pray for so and so. Did you know this is going on?" They like to use the whole pray for them kinda thing, but it's really just they're getting the cheese man and the tea out, you know? But it's like the dynamics of the family being all in your business, and it's really hard in some cultures and families to create those boundaries around your immediate family. So, how do you how do you navigate that, Stacey? That's something, like, I will say that I struggle with, like, that's just how we grew up. Our
Yeah.
family knew everything about each other, and I think as I'm getting older, I have created certain boundaries where I just I'm like, I don't need to tell others to pray for me. I'm just going straight to God. I'm
Yeah.
going straight to God, and I have a core circle of prayer warriors that I know these are my go-tos, and the
Yeah.
majority aren't family. They're
Right.
they're not
Right.
my
They're
family.
not. Right. Yeah.
So, how do you kinda navigate that in a sense to where you don't feel or others don't feel that you're trying to control them? Because I think
Right.
that's the bigger challenge in family dynamics. It's like, "Well, what do you mean this boundary? You're just trying to be controlling."
Yeah, so communicating, right? So communicating what your boundaries are, and communication means to be understood. So that's why it takes a lot of work. A lot of the time, it feels like the game of telephone, right? Especially with the spouse. Men and women are wired very differently. They hear, yeah, and I'm just going, yeah, that's not what I said. So, so really learning how to communicate in a healthy way. So we're using I statements. So so you focus on your feelings and your needs and you're not blaming the other person. I feel uncomfortable when Tia, you call me and you ask me to pray for someone, but then you give me much more information than I really need to know. That's not helpful for me. I would just appreciate knowing that so and so needs prayer. I really don't need the details. I'll take it to the Lord, and the Lord will speak to me about what to pray for specifically. Right. And that's what I do. It's like, I don't need all the details. This is not a gossip platch over here. We're not going to do that. Or I need, right? So it's always taking responsibility for what you are needing, what you are feeling, not being accusatory, not saying, I feel hurt when you, you know, I feel hurt when this happens. We're taking full responsibility for it. Here's the thing, too, especially with people that are closest to you. And I've had to deal with my Latino in-laws as well. And and I love them, but there were no boundaries, and so I am the person coming from the outside in, and I had to set very clear boundaries because I felt unsafe with certain things. It's a great thing now, 19 years in, where we really are family and we all understand each other, but that's because the Lord got a hold of some of those unbelieving family members, and so it's really changed the dynamic. But, saying things like, "I would appreciate it if," and just being very clear as to what your values are, what what is acceptable to you, what is not acceptable to you, and the key with boundaries is consistency. If there is no consistency, say for example, you set a boundary, the boundary gets violated, and there's no consequence, then that you're telling that person it's okay for them to continue violating your boundaries. So you have to be very specific and direct when you're communicating, right? So you're avoiding that vague or passive language. You clearly state your boundary and the consequences of crossing it. Period. Right? We're going to be assertive. So the assertive communication style is the most healthiest. There's the passive aggressive, and aggressive. The assertive is the most healthiest. So being assertive means you're empowered to express your needs, right? Confidently, you're being respectful, you're maintaining that eye contact, you use a calm and firm tone of voice, and you be prepared to listen to someone else, to, the other person's perspective as well. And again, like I said, being consistent, and you need to practice self-care as well in that. So it's really all about communication with respect and being consistent. I know you're a mom with your kids. When you have told them when they were younger, look, don't put your hand over the flame, you're going to get burned, let's say, right? Because kids, they want to, check everything out. And then, they keep playing around and they get burned, right? And, I'm sure a conversation would go like, okay, well, so how did that feel? Right? It was hurtful to them. So when we think about boundaries, it isn't just for us. It is for the people that we're in a relationship with as well, where everyone knows, hey, this is okay. This is not okay. This is how we maintain safety. And in knowing what the boundaries are, we have freedom. When there are no boundaries, there is chaos,
Yeah.
not freedom.
Yes. Yes. Oh, that's so good, Stacy. Geez, we gotta I gotta start wrapping up with you right here, and I'm gonna have to have you back, Stacy. I'm serious. We're gonna have to do, like, a part 2 with this because I am just I my you can't see my notes. I like, front and back, I have just written down so much because just so much knowledge that you, gave to the listeners right now and to myself, so just thank you. But as we start to wrap up, I know there's so many resources that you can leave with,
Yeah.
but can you just share, direct the listeners to maybe some books and resources that are really good in helping with boundaries?
Yeah, absolutely. So John Townsend and Henry Cloud, doctors, excuse me, John Townsend and Dr. Henry Cloud are two Christian psychologists. They are the boundaries guys. I really love their books. So Boundaries by them is a great book to start with, just in general, to know what boundaries are, to get more in depth in that. They also have scripture references in there. If you are in a dating relationship, I would highly recommend that you and the person that you are dating get their book, Boundaries in Dating. It also has a workbook. So I highly recommend that bundle. And then if there's toxic relationships, whether it's you're in a toxic relationship or you have friendships that might be toxic or even a coworker, I highly recommend getting Safe People. So those 3 are by those guys. They are solid, in the material that they do put out. And then I also have a checklist that I have created for boundaries and how to get started. If you're interested in that, you can email me at info@trueyouministries.com, and I'll be then just put in the subject, boundaries checklist, and I'm happy to get that out to you.
Awesome, and we will put all your information in, the show notes, but
Yeah.
this has been such a valuable and insightful conversation,
Mhm.
honestly. You spoke
Thank
so
you.
much just to me. I gained so much information and wisdom, and I just know that the listeners are gonna take away so much from this. And it's probably gonna be eye-opening for some listeners, as they are navigating through this and listening and, hearing some of the stuff and realizing, like, "Yeah, I struggle with boundaries. I struggle with self-awareness with that." So I just know that this is going to definitely, help a lot of people. So again, thank you for your wisdom. Now, before we wrap up though, can you just actually share with our listeners how they can find you if,
Mhm.
and what resources you have available? Mm,
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is the best place to go ahead and contact me through trueyouministries.com. I have a lot of resources on there. There's a resources tab. There's free downloads on there for different things. I've got my podcast up there as well. I have you can check out all the different services that I do offer for individuals and couples as well. I do offer a free 20-minute consultation. So if there's something that you've been struggling with and you really want to get counseling around it, there's no cost to you to schedule a 20-minute consultation with me. I may be the right person to work with you and based on what I offer, and maybe I'm not, but I can give you referrals as well. So go to my website. I actually just had it redone. So there's a lot of really great things on there. Go and check it out.
Awesome. Stacy, again, thank you so much. And to everyone tuning in, if this episode just resonated with you, I want to encourage you to take some time. Take a moment to just reflect and really look at how can you create healthy boundaries in the relationships that you are in. And whether you need to strengthen them, whether you need to create them in your own relationships, just sit and pray about it. Really get discernment from God on where you need to put your focus on in creating boundaries. And as always, if you learned something from this episode, if you enjoyed this conversation, if you found it helpful, go and share it with somebody. This is such good, insightful information that I am certain that there is someone that you love that could really listen to this. So share it with a friend, leave a review, and subscribe so that you don't miss out on our next episode. Thank you for listening. And until next time, keep chasing joy.